What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some tips to hopefully help you play better around Kenny's respawn token in Fortnite Chapter 7. As always, if you guys do find this video to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below what you think of the Kenny respawn token, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything. It is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So the Kenny respawn token has been in the game since the start of the South Park update, but this week's update changed how I feel about it a lot, because you are now able to buy the Kenny respawn tokens in the miscellaneous vending machines that also sell the wingsuits and the cheesy poofs. Prior to this week's update, those vending machines would just have wingsuits, and this made getting the Kenny respawn token a lot more possible and a lot more of something that you can like plan around and actually go for. Whereas previously you just had to get lucky looting or get it from a Rift event or get it from the shooting game at Cartman Land. There was like very limited ways to get it, and most of it was just like random. So like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Now, you know, you can get your gold up, you can go to those vending machines and you can buy it, and that makes it to where you can get this every single game. And this obviously allows you to come back when eliminated. So it's something that's a huge game changer and is definitely worth going for, I think, if you can get 2,000 extra gold after having the rest of your inventory squared away. And you get gold just by looting. There's like job board quests you can do. I end up getting most of my gold just from eliminating enemy players. And so it typically isn't a very difficult thing for me to get a lot of gold, especially once you're situated in the game. You know, you have your high rarity loot. You don't really need to buy anything. You end up racking up gold pretty quick after just a few kills. And there may be some matches where you aren't really able to do much with the Kenny respawn token. Like you just come back and there's not much options for you and you just die again. But there will also be some games where, you know, you have the opportunity to win games that you otherwise would have been out of. And I think the biggest problem, or like the thing that's going to make or break this for a lot of people, is what you decide to do when you respawn. Because a lot of people, they just want to go and eliminate the person who took them out and get revenge. And this can work, but it can also be a really bad idea depending on the circumstance. I think there's several things that you really need to consider when it comes to like re-challenging the person that eliminated you. The first is just going to be, how healthy were they? If they cleanly eliminated you and you barely did any damage to them, there really isn't much of a point in forcing that fight again while you have less loot and less shield. With the time it takes for you to respawn and glide down to them, the little bit of damage you did to them is probably healed away. Their guns are reloaded and they're ready for another fight. So like if you don't have them really weak, you don't want to force a fight that's just on worse odds for you than the one you just had was, right? Also, how far away you spawn from the enemy is going to affect this a lot, because kind of goes without saying, but if you spawn pretty far from where you were eliminated, it's going to take quite a while for you to get to where you just were. And that gives the person who eliminated you plenty of time to heal up, reload, and just potentially be in a completely different area. So even if you had them quite weak, if you spawn across the map, they've had more than enough time to heal. And so that advantage you created is non-existent at this point. Also, what weapon the game gave you is probably going to play a role in this. I'm not sure the entirety of the weapons you can spawn with. I know you can spawn with the Deadeye AR, you can spawn with the dual shotguns and the pump, but you get one weapon and you get one blue weapon. And so this is something that could be a factor, because if you get the dual shotguns and you're close range to somebody who you just had weak, sure, you can land on them and just barrel stuff them with the dual shotguns, and you can probably get the kill that way, despite not having very much, like not having full shield when you first spawn, right? But even the Deadeye AR, you could do that with if you have the enemy weak. But spawning back with the pump, it is kind of like a weird weapon to force a fight with immediately, unless you're pretty sure you can one pump the enemy or there's like good cover to play around. But if you land on them with a pump and just miss your shot or don't kill them in that shot, the fact that they have other weapons in their inventory to use and potentially swap to is something that could really, you know, just make what you thought was going to be a winnable situation not really that winnable. Also, what your teammates are doing is going to matter a lot. You know, if you're playing squads and your team says like, hey, we're winning this fight, you can just land back and get your loot, cool. But if your teammates are like all going down and it's basically a 1v4 and you're in the air, you might just want to fly away, try to regain somewhere, try to buy the reboot cards, and then get your team back that way. So like how the fight is going in like the momentum of the fight is something that's going to play a huge role in team game modes, and it just is on your enemies to or it's on your teammates to communicate that to you. So if you aren't able to land back right on the enemy, like let's say, you know, you ended up far away or you didn't do much damage to them and you don't think it's worth landing back on, going to somewhere that you think maybe hasn't been looted yet is going to be the best bet, especially if it's on like edge of zone. If something's in the center of zone, you know, you could have enemies coming from any direction and it might be a struggle. But if there's something on edge of zone that you can fly to that you think probably hasn't been looted, that could be a pretty decent area for you to regain with. Like some of those low-key spots that often aren't like dropped at, that can be one of the best locations for you to land at. Also, vending machines, you know, if you have a good amount of gold, you don't lose all your gold when you respawn with the Kenny respawn token. So you might just be able to land on a vending machine and buy a decent loadout. Unfortunately, with the weapon vending machines, they recently removed the green weapon. And it's not like a green weapon would be perfect, but it would be like a pretty cheap option for you to get and, you know, have something. If depending on your gold, that might matter a lot. So like the green weapons aren't there anymore, but still, if you have a good amount of gold, landing on those vending machines, you know, helps you get to max shield and potentially get the rest of your inventory squared away and not just have the one weapon you spawned in with. Also, I think one of the best things you can do if the situation allows for it is landing on a previous kill you had got, if there's any in the area. So I'll have a clip on screen now of where I did this. I ended up losing a fight. I spawned somewhat close to the enemy, but instead of landing directly on them, I land on a previous kill I had got at this gas station, get a bit of loot, get some shield, and then I push the person who eliminated me and end up winning the second fight we had. So if I just jumped right on them, I maybe win it, I maybe don't win it. But getting this loot from a kill that I had in the area and then playing the fight out was just something that was going to work a lot better. And it might not always be that you can get loot and then challenge the person who eliminated you. But if you end up spawning up in an area and you remember like, hey, I killed someone over here that game, let me go check if that loot is still there. It can be something that's a much better start than just landing somewhere and hoping it's unlooted, or landing right on the person who eliminated you when it's not a time where that really makes sense. So those are the things that I consider most when trying to respawn with this Kenny coin. Sometimes you have no other option though than to just land on somebody and challenge them, especially in the end game. And especially in Stick of Truth end games where this coin can be incredibly helpful. I'll have a game on screen now where it's a pretty chaotic match. I'm running around eliminating a bunch of people and I end up losing a fight, but I had the person who eliminated me really weak. Like I did a good amount of damage to them as I went down, and I'm able to respawn with the Kenny coin, land back on the ground quickly, force a fight with them while they're pretty weak, and then I'm able to win the game off that in a match that I should have just lost because, you know, I was eliminated, I lost the fight. But just doing a good amount of damage before I went down and then also coming back really quickly, I think is what made this game winnable. And just because of the chaos the Stick of Truth creates, players are often getting like chain third-partied without much time to heal or reload. So coming back with just one weapon may be all you need to capitalize on the chaos and steal the win, especially if that weapon is the Deadeye AR or the dual shotguns. Those are kind of my two preferred weapons to come back with if it's going to be a very scrappy fight. Also in team game modes with the Stick of Truth, just being able to land back and waste time for some of the enemies might be all it takes for your team to win the game because, you know, things are really chaotic in the Stick of Truth matches. And with the Stick of Truth spawn rate increasing, I think that's going to make having the Kenny coin even more valuable than it previously was. So that's why I said earlier on in the video, it's definitely worth going for, not only for the second shot at life if you die in the early to mid game, but in the end game especially, and when it's a Stick of Truth end game especially, this Kenny coin is super, super valuable. So I definitely think it's worth getting. When you eliminate somebody who's coming back with the Kenny coin, I don't think it's always the best idea to focus on them. I love shooting people out of the air, and I would be happy to. But if you have the choice between like shooting someone who's coming back with, you know, one weapon and they don't have shield on yet versus the other players who are alive and are probably a more imminent threat, probably worth focusing more on the players who are a more imminent threat. And if you're worrying too much on shooting people out of the sky, you might just get, you know, jumped on by the person who's a more imminent threat, especially if it's the end game. So I don't worry too much about trying to kill them. Like if I can, I will for sure. But I'm typically going to be more concerned with the other players. And if we're in like the early game or mid game and somebody has this Kenny coin, I'm not really going to camp their loot just hoping they eventually maybe come back for it. I'm just going to play the match out normally because they might end up respawning completely across the map. So it's not really worth worrying about eliminating that one player again. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.